Alright, let's take a look at 49ers. A team that started out 5-0, were Super Bowl favorites, and were steamrolling teams, but now have lost the last 3 games, and are now on a 3-game losing streak. So let's take a look at what happened. So in this video, I'm going to use 5 categories to see how the Niners stacked up. First downs and total yards show how effective you can move the ball. Penalties and turnovers can be absolute killers for a team. And a team with less talent can beat a more talented team if they control the ball with time of possession. So the Niners started off against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won 4 out of 5 categories with only losing the penalties category. Their dominance across the board showed as they cruised to a 30-7 victory, while their record improved to 1-0. Now, the Rams actually won 4 out of 5 categories, but not by much, and it showed as it was a close game, as the final score was 30-23. But it was more so 30-20, but the Rams kicked a garbage time field goal to make the score look better than it was. Now, the Rams may have won statistically, but Stafford's 2 interceptions was the difference maker. As they did not dominate the stats, they barely won, but those 2 interceptions was too much to overcome. Niners won 4 out of 5 categories against the Giants, and they not only won, but dominated, and it showed across the scoreboard as the Niners won 30-12. Niners statistically didn't dominate the Cardinals, but they did win in the categories 3-1, narrowly losing in the time of possession battle, but they won nonetheless 35-16. In what was one of the most anticipated matchups of the year, turned out to be a total shellacking, as the Niners dominated the Cowboys in all 5 categories, and that showed on the scoreboard as the Niners won 42-10 to get off to a 5-0 start. So here's where it starts to fall apart. The Browns win 3 out of 5 categories against the Niners. Ironically, the Niners won the penalties matchup, which is ironic because it was a couple of bogus penalties that kept the Browns in the game. Bad calls aside, this is a game the Niners should have won if Jake Moody would have made that game-winning field goal. Now, this is a game where the Vikings jumped out early. Kirk Cousins shredded the Niners' supposed elite defense. The Niners were in it up until the end, and Purdy had played pretty well, but he made some bad picks, and the Niners ended up losing. The Niners are the more talented team, but the Vikings dominated the yards and possession battle, and thus were able to edge out a win over the Niners. Similar to the Vikings game, the Bengals got the jump on the Niners, getting out to an early lead. The Niners battled back, but penalties and turnovers were the difference makers, keeping the Niners from coming back and thus dropping to 5-3. Now, I still think the Niners are a Super Bowl contending team, but they need to get back to winning these categories if they want to have a real chance of winning. In all their wins except for the Rams game, they've won all these categories, and in the games that they've lost, they've all lost in these categories. All 3 of their losses were winnable games, but they lost the turnover battle, and that was the difference maker. They cut down on the turnovers and penalties, they can go back to winning games.